I want to thank you all for being here this morning. My name is Phil Huckleberry. I'm chair of the Green Party of Chicago. We have not done anything like this before. I'm very happy that we are doing this year, and we have been committed to being involved in the mayoral campaign and giving Greens an opportunity and other people an opportunity to hear from candidates on some issues that may not be brought up in debates or other forums. And those of you that are here today will have an opportunity to hear some answers that I think you won't get to hear anywhere else. And hopefully we'll be able to share that with some other people as well, because we've got Vern over here doing some videography for us. I don't want to spend a lot of time. I will wrap stuff up later because we have people that have to get out of here a lot sooner than I do. So I just want to introduce everyone that's here, starting on my right. Alderman Bob Fioretti from the 2nd Ward, Bill Doc Walls, and Jesus Chuy Garcia, County Commissioner. Again, thank you for being here. What we'd like to do, Chuy has to leave relatively early. What we want to do is we want to just go straight into some opening remarks from everybody, just a couple minutes, and then we want to make sure that we hear from him before he has to leave. So, Commissioner, if you'd like to start. And I think you can just grab that microphone and you'll be all right.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Green Party. I'm delighted to be here with you today to ask for your support. I'm running for mayor of the city of Chicago. Essentially, my history is that of a community organizer, community builder, a progressive coalition builder over a 30-year span. Part of my experience includes having organized everything from block clubs to heading up a successful community development corporation, to have been part of many struggles with people all over neighborhoods in the city of Chicago, as an advocate of sound public policy, progressive politics, and moving the city forward. Part of the urgency in the city of Chicago is putting Chicago on a different course, embracing the neighborhoods to develop a new set of priorities that will work for Chicago neighborhoods, for ordinary Chicagoans, and empower them to turn back the corporate agenda that has hijacked city government, put it to work for the interest of investment bankers and folks who have other interests in Chicago, and investments who expect a return on those investments. I'm here this morning because I've long been an admirer of the work as independent political activists of the Green Party. I think we share many values. In addition to my community building and progressive coalition building credentials, I'm the only candidate who has experience serving at the 3 levels of government. As an alderman in the city of Chicago, when Harold Washington was mayor, my election to the council helped smash the old Verdoliak 29 obstructionist block in the city council. I've been a state senator representing a larger district on the southwest side of the city of Chicago. Most recently, I was elected to the county board, where I just completed my first term and elected to a 2nd term on the county board. I've been Tony Preckwinkle's floor leader on the Cook County board. Proud of our history there, how we were able to take a government that was adrift, headed in the wrong direction, working mostly for the benefit of the political class in Cook County. We turned it around, put it on a course where we've won the trust of people in Cook County. Come before you this morning as a fellow activist, asking for your support to bring Chicago's neighborhoods together, to improve public safety, to improve schools. I have a history in both of those areas, and lay the foundation in all neighborhoods for real local economic development. Essentially, my message is that we want to bring prosperity to the neighborhoods for working people, for poor people, and ensure that all of Chicago moves forward as the economy improves. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Bill Doc Walls. I was born and raised in Chicago. I graduated Horace Mann Elementary, Chicago Vocational High School, Tuskegee University, and IIT Chicago Kent College of Law. Back in 1983, when Harold Washington announced his candidacy for mayor, every fiber of my being stood up. and I knew I had to get involved. I took a leave of absence from law school and helped to organize the Lawyers Committee for Harold Washington, served as president of Law Students for Harold Washington, served as his assistant scheduler, and then became his direct assistant. In that capacity, I traveled with Harold Washington locally, nationally, and internationally. Sat in on 70% of his meetings. Reorganized the departments of Streets and Sanitation, the Department of Water, the Department of Sewers, the Department of Inspectional Services. Made important decisions in terms of the redesign of Navy Pier. Working with Harold Washington, I helped to move this government inch by inch into the reform government that we grew to know and love. I'm a community activist. I'm concerned about people, and I'm consistent in that concern. Without equivocation, I'm the most qualified candidate for mayor of the city of Chicago. I'm competent, knowledgeable, experienced, and fully conversant with the functions, operations, and inner workings of Chicago city government. I've got a history with the Green Party. As a matter of fact, I'm the only person amongst us who endorsed Rich Whitney when he was running for governor of the state of Illinois. I've had a deep affection and deep commitment to the Green Party. I'm an independent. I'm not a Democrat committeeman or a Democrat committed individual. I'm someone who's fully independent and working to help bring Chicago to a better place. Working with the Green Party, I can help to unify this city by promoting culture and diversity sensitivity amongst people of all ages, races, socioeconomic backgrounds, all religious persuasions, all sexual orientations, all physical and mental disabilities and limitations, because I understand that none of us is any better than the rest of us. Alone, we're weak and insignificant, but together we can move this city forward. We have to establish irreproachable public safety services, develop and efficiently maintain our public infrastructure, enrich the Department on Aging to ensure the health and well-being of our senior citizens, provide a superior public school education for each and every individual child, train and retrain adults so that they're ready for the workforce. We can do that working together. Build our walls for mayor.
Thank you. I'm Bob Fioretti, and I'm running for alderman. Yeah, right. I'm running for mayor of the city of Chicago. You know, this election is about choice. Are we going to have the same career politicians? Or are we going to have a new direction for the city of Chicago? I want a Chicago that works for all citizens, not just campaign donors and special interests that fill coffers. We need a mayor that looks out for the people in this city, even when it's not popular. You know, we need an economic development program that's outside of the city. I grew up in this city. I was born in this city. I was born on the south side in Roseland. And Roseland was a lot different place than it was than it is now when I was growing up. You know, my father came here as an immigrant from Italy, and they came here for Chicago being a place of opportunity, a land of opportunity. You know, I talk to the young people today, and what do I hear from them? Have they given up on us? Have they forgotten us? You know, they walk down streets and they see 50 closed schools, shuttered businesses, or those few businesses that are there on crumbling streets. You know, we look around and we see what's happening in our city and where we're going, and we have to ask, did they give up on us? We know that the political few, they're making the decisions over there on the 5th floor, and we see dollars and cents are being spent for the elite few. They make the decisions on who they are and where our money is going, where taxpayer funding money is going. Now, we have a crisis here. We have a crisis of vision. We have a crisis of poverty. We have a crisis of violence. And I think we all know that violence in and of itself does not exist in a vacuum. We cannot divorce violence from poverty, from lack of education, from lack of hope. And we've been witnesses, all of us in this room, to several troubling decisions that have affected us. The closing of 50 schools, the closing of the mental health clinics, And yet I believe we can reverse the decisions that have been made. We can undo some of this damage. Yes, we know we need more police, highly skilled and hired from our communities and understand the complexities of our communities. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. We need job programs that lead to real jobs. We need environmentally sound jobs. We have to invest in people. That includes healthcare, physical and mental health, at a local accessible level. We need to keep our promises. We need to protect our most vulnerable citizens, and we need to reassert our values. We need to recognize that once and for all, that the major factors to blame for crime and the problems in our schools is poverty. Our city needs to help start and re-establish programs that will help our children develop both socially, emotionally, as well as academically, so that they can fulfill the promise of employment and become productive partners in the future of this city. Yesterday I rolled out such a program on economic and jobs. You can go to my website, bobfioretti.com, and see all the particulars of it. But what do we see out of this administration? We see them stripping away the programs that are necessary for our children. And we are facing a future that is headed in the wrong direction for way too many people. That is why today we need visionary leadership. In Chicago, starting in our neighborhoods, rebuilding block by block, making the best use of public funds, as well as an investment from responsible business owners. I believe in the watchwords that we all know of, that we are all here and endowed with certain inalienable rights. And among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But as we are here in a church, in a house of God, we should also remember that He has endowed us with an additional gift. The gift of human intelligence. The ability to reason together and approach one another with compassion and respect to find solutions. And together, we will all play a role in rebuilding this city. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a big list of questions, but given the Commissioner Garcia has to leave early, I want to just ask the big question first so he can have an opportunity to address it, and that's about schools. What are your positions on an elected school board, not just whether you're in favor of it, but also how it should be constituted, and corollarily about charter schools and the possibility of a moratorium on charter schools?
As I've stated on many occasions, I support an elective school board. I would place a moratorium on the expansion of charter schools in the city of Chicago. I am endorsed by the Chicago Teachers Union and proud to have that endorsement. I've been an advocate of public education for many, many years. And in my community work, we have created centers of community in schools, keeping them open after school hours for students, for parents, for community members at large. It's been part of a multi-pronged approach to public safety that's reduced homicide rates, especially as it relates to young people and gang involvement in the immediate community. My record supporting public education is a long one. I voted against the bill that in 1995 took away even the city council's approval of mayoral appointees to the school board and gave all the power to the mayor. That's also the same bill that began the charter mania that we've seen grow out of proportion in Chicago, with over 125 charters having created over that time. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll ask to be excused. I do have a 10 o'clock and it's a long ride. Thank you very much.
I too favor an elected school board. How should it be constituted? We should have 8 single-member districts with a president chosen at large. The most important thing is to ensure that that election is not hijacked by big business, special interest groups, unions, or other political action committees. We want to make certain that the average citizen has an opportunity to be elected. So I believe in campaign financing reform for the elected school board. It should be real clear, it should be real concise, and it should be protective of the rights of all citizens. I believe that we have to have a superior public school education for each and every individual child. And that transcends the development of modern buildings with state-of-the-art equipment and facilities which are conducive to safe and potentially productive educational environments. We have to make certain that we do more than just teach reading, writing, math, and science. We have to teach our children the humanities, the arts, the vocations. We have to teach them music and appreciation for the finer things in life so that our children can grow and are equipped to follow their hearts, their minds, and talents and become the human beings that we would hope that they would become. Education is important, but it's not one size fits all. We have to have educational intensive care. That means that we have to evaluate each child at the pre-K level and determine what it is they need to get from pre-K through 12th grade graduation. Excuse me. That means we have to take an intensive look at that individual child's needs and fulfill those needs. It doesn't matter to me whether that child has one parent, two parents, or no parent whatsoever. We want to make certain that each and every child has the same potential, the same ability, the same educational opportunity. That's where the city comes in. That's where the community comes in. We stand in loco parentis on behalf of those children because they're all of our children. We also have to make certain that the city of Chicago is a safer place for those children. That's part and parcel of it. We have gang lines in Chicago. They're well-defined and well-drawn. When you close schools, you force children to go to school across gang lines. And oftentimes, those children have to decide whether they want to live or get an education. So they're forced out or they're dropped out, especially when you close community schools. Communities are built around park schools and libraries. That's important, that's essential, that's critical to understand. When you close the schools, when you shorten the hours of the libraries, when you diminish the parks, children become disconnected from the most important institutions in our society. So, I would have never closed 50 schools. I'm a visionary. Instead, even if that school was certified as underperforming, even if that school only had 38 students in it, you make it cost-effective and efficient, but you maintain that building as an education-first facility. So you cordon off a portion of that building for education. You take the remainder of that building and you put in a police substation paid for by the police. You put in a Department of Human Services office paid for by the Department of Human Services. You put in a WIC office paid for by WIC. You put in a regional CPS office paid for by CPS. You put in facilities for therapy and counseling, the type that's mandated for those students. Now you have a compartmentalized building which is sustainable and it doesn't further burden the taxpayers. Right now with the 50 shirted schools, we're paying to keep on the gas, heat, electricity, maintenance, insurance. We're paying to make certain those schools stay boarded up and safe. And we have to maintain the roofs to make certain that there's no leakage and damage. It's costing us money. Under the scenario that I just painted, those buildings are education first, community schools that serve our greater purpose. So, my point is, Chicago needs a visionary who understands education from the bottom to the top, who will do those things necessary to make Chicago a better place. Keep in mind, in those communities, those vacant lots will turn into houses and homes that are homes for families with children, and there'll be a new demand for those schools. If you give them away to your family and friends for $1, the city is robbed of its greatest resources. Thank you very much.
One thing I should make clear, Doc and I are here for the same purposes. We're here to unseat the 5th floor. And because we are both believers that this city has taken the wrong direction. But you go to the question about where do you stand on schools and education. I'm the only one, and maybe Doc has been too, but when I ran in '06, I ran for one reason, because I saw 6 out of every 100 African American children were going through our CPS system, made it through college. I thought it was unacceptable. I was for an elected school board when I walked into the city council. Nobody had to say to me, oh, by the way, our big union endorsed us and you better change your position the next day and then come out and change your position. I think we should hold every state senator, every state representative, and every county commissioner accountable on where were they when the 50 schools were closed. How come they didn't appear at the local hearing center when we had 120,000 parents and 30,000 now displaced students? Where were they at the time? They were nowhere to be found. Yes, I do want a moratorium, and you know what? I'm glad people follow all my programs, and they can go line by line on what my educational policy is. And yes, I've called for a long time call, and I've introduced resolutions repeatedly in the city council calling for a moratorium on charter schools. But let's go back to what I said at the beginning, that income inequality is one of the issues that we're dealing with here. You know, I have more schools in the second ward than any other alderman. I have 40 schools, and I've seen the impact of what it means to have good schools. We've heard of something called Operation Safe Passage. Well, I created Operation Safe Passage with community leaders, police, parents, to make sure after Reuben Ivy was killed outside of Crane High School, that we made sure when the enrollment dipped down to 30-some% after the shooting, that we had our kids go back to school. And then we addressed wraparound services. And not only did we do it just for the term of the school year, but we brought them in for the whole summer. So we can have safe areas, have ways for kids after school, have them engaged. I introduced a resolution for $25 million to put 16 to 22 years old kids to work during the summer. We had a 3-hour hearing at City Hall. Guess what? This administration decided not to push it out of committee. But what have I done during the summer, and where have everybody else been? Especially elected officials. Last year I found the state grant. I had 45 kids working in my, that I put to work at $9 an hour 2 years ago. Last year I could only get it for $35 an hour. But we had kids that came to work every day. And not only did we do it then, but we put them in the police station, fire station, a fire academy, police academy, shed aquarium, museum of science and industry. I brought them to city council. I've connected our schools with our museums, so they have ambassadorships, all 40 of them. I've connected our children to come up to sites that they've never seen, at the top of the Willis Tower. I brought our children together to work, and some have become docents and mentors by the police department in Shed Aquarium. You know, it's just not all so simple and we're going to wave it around. And why? We have 18,000 minimum homeless kids in our CPS system. 18,000. Look around here, how many people do we have? And I'll multiply it and get to 18,000. How far will that line go around the block? We'll go from here to Wrigley Field? We have to do better. We have to find the money and target it for our children. They are our future. Good education leads to good jobs and reduces violence in our streets. Thank you.
I have this really long question about TIFs that Tom Tresser of Civic Lab gave me. I'm thinking that maybe I won't read the whole question, because really the question is simply, what are you going to do about the damn TIFs? Oh, you don't need to get up.
Well, we do need mics. We need mics.
We need mics though.
Yeah, we need mics.
Oh, we got to cover there, so we can
Take it off.
Yeah, you can take it. Okay. That is.
Tax increment financing. I was part of the administration that introduced tax increment financing to the city of Chicago. When Harold Washington implemented tax increment financing, it was done for the purpose of serving blighted communities. And for those of you who need to know, tax increment financing is a government program authorized by the state, which authorizes municipalities to collect the tax revenue above equalized assessed value, which was determined at the time that the TIF district was created. That money comes from the sister agencies in the city of Chicago, including the Chicago Public Schools, Chicago Park Districts, and other taxing bodies. We have about $1.7 billion sitting idle in a slush fund, a TIF slush fund, that's usually spent at the discretion of the mayor. I believe that we need to use that $1.7 billion to pay down the city's debt. That's important, and I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to talk about why that's important later. So that $1.7 billion that's sitting idle, it has nothing to do with the $432 billion that we're going to collect this year that's sitting in a slush fund. TIFs have been used improperly. We have a component called porting that allows you to take money from one TIF district, a blighted area, and transfer it into the neighboring TIF district. And as you continue to port along, that money ends up downtown. And that's how we end up using TIF money for things like the improvement of Sears Tower, or the development of Millennium Park, or the development of a Maggie Daley Park, or a Riverwalk project. Things that do not serve the blighted communities. That's why they can talk about the DePaul Arena being built with TIF funds, or the Marriott Hotel. It's a travesty and a shame, because you have communities which could really use that money for economic development. They're starving. We have food deserts in 22 of our 77 communities. And we have a program to provide relief in the form of grocers, community owned and operated in those communities. TIFs sunset after 23 years, but can be extended for an additional 12 years. We would sunset every TIF on schedule and get to the point where we no longer have TIF districts in Chicago, because they take resources from the other governmental agencies, including Chicago Public Schools, entities which need that money desperately. We would also make certain that those TIF districts that are in existence do not suffer because their monies were ported from TIF district to TIF district in the meantime. So we understand that TIFs are important. I would use them to build low-income housing. I'd use them to build grocery stores in those areas that are food deserts. And we use them specifically for economic development to benefit small businesses in the city of Chicago.
Thank you. And I don't want to be dismissive of what Doc said, because we do agree. But you see how difficult it was in terms of an explanation of what TIFs are? I think it's meant to be that way so the general public can't understand what a TIF is about. I've used it for affordable housing. I've used it to repair streets. I've used it to help grow parks, create parks, enhance parks, enhance lighting. You know, that's what the TIF should be used for. We do have economic tools. Don't forget, and I think many of you know I'm the only alderman who's ever closed a food desert, but we did it without really using TIF subsidies, even though it was in a TIF zone. At the same time, we've used TIF money to help all of our schools and create new schools. It does have a good purpose, but it has gone so much off to the corporate handouts. It's just another corporate loophole that we're dealing with, and not asking those that can afford. When we talk about DePaul and Marriott, you mean to tell me that that corporation can't build its own hotel? And I want more hotels near, and I've been a proponent of more hotels near McCormick Place for years. I think we need 4 or 5 hotels right around there, so we can encourage the tourism and convention industry. And at the same time, I have created the entertainment zone by McCormick Place, down Michigan from Cermak to 26th Street, the only one that we really have in the city. TIFs, you go on my website, we have, we're complete reforming of them, elimination of them, an audit of them, using the resources out of them, surplusing where we can. Let's not forget, I and several other of my colleagues, and it was a resolution that I drafted calling for the surplus of the TIFs. And this mayor followed what we said. So I have to hand it to him because he wanted to use that TIF surplus money. Don't forget, as Daka just said, we only get a small percentage, like 20 cents on the dollar, but CPS gets about 53% when we surplus it and give it back. So that money at CPS was then directed to retain teachers that they were firing. So that was a good point, and I'm glad the mayor followed what we said. Probably the only time that he followed what we said. You know, we need to do, and we've done it for affordable housing. I've done it in a number of places throughout my ward to use TIF money to create affordable housing. I've also have a resolution pending that we had about a 3-hour hearing way back in November of 11, maybe it was October, to use the TIFs as banks to help for low interest loans to those that want to buy homes, first-time buyers, especially when we were in the bad slump of the economy and the developers were saying, oh, well, we can't build, we can't sell. Nobody can get credit. Well, this is the way to give them credit. And of course, the developers always like this big swoop. They just want the big lunch out of the big dollars and cents, and they don't want to go through the hard work. TIFs could be a good economic tool, but it can't be the primary reliance of what we have. That's the problem that we have. It's the main reliance. There are other ways, and we need to get to those. Thank you.
Okay, so you mentioned one of the most blighted districts in the city, LaSalle Street, and that leads into the next question pretty well. What do you feel about a financial transactions tax and or other new sources of revenue for the city?
I think we need new sources of revenue. We cannot have another property tax increase, at least at this time. I mean, it's unacceptable. I've thrown out the financial transaction tax on the table as a possible source, but I think I know the difficulties of it. You know, Tom Donovan, who was, I believe, Belandic's chief of staff, and went down to Springfield in '83 when he was out of office and he was head of the Board of Trade, that they put a line in the state statute that says no financial transaction tax. So it also requires, and I've been working with the Nurses Association, you know, you don't need big dollars off of each trade. You just need a small fraction of a penny, and we'd go a long way. I also want a commuter tax. I think equity demands it in terms of what we do. And when I say that at 1%, which is that you can write off on your federal income taxes. There's 620,000 people that work here and live elsewhere, from Milwaukee to Hammond to the few that drive in from Iowa, would generate about $350 million. But I would want to use that to pay down our pension obligation through a pension obligation bond. You know, we're faced with, in 2016, anywhere from $500 million to $800 million obligation. We need to look for new sources of revenue. Some to come out of the TIFs, to surplus them, but that's small. We need to be aggressive in terms of bringing new businesses and redevelop our communities, which can help generate sales taxes, income taxes that come back to our city. I think we need to have everything on the table to be looked at and not exclude anything. It's as simple as that.
Fines, fees, assessments, taxes, more. I say no. Chicago has 7 forms of revenue: real estate tax, sales tax, federal aid, state aid, motor fuel taxes, public utility taxes, fines, fees, and assessments. And it's those fines, fees, and assessments that hurt our economy. Even when you look at the transaction tax, and Dorothy Tillman used to be a big champion of that concept, it went absolutely nowhere because you do need the approval of the state legislature to make that happen, and they've already said no. Why are we talking about it? It makes no sense whatsoever. I saw a study, and that study indicated that it's milliseconds of a transaction that matter, and oftentimes transactions were being intercepted by bandits who would then precede the person who was promoting the transaction, the trader that was promoting the transaction, grab it before he gets there, milliseconds, and then sell it to him at a higher rate. So they develop routes. And Chicago isn't one of those speedy routes that would allow traders protection. So there's no real need to trade through Chicago. It's a convenience if you live here, but there's absolutely nothing to stop you from trading through another source outside of Chicago or offshore. So it's not mandatory. If you tax those persons who only make pennies on each transaction, they're going to figure out a way around Chicago, and you're going to kill the business here in Chicago. And then the taxpayers have to pay more because the money that was coming through Chicago through the Board of Trade is no longer coming through the Board of Trade. So I'm not for more fees. I was the first person to suggest the commuter tax. Go back, 2007. I suggested a commuter tax and argued that those people come into the city of Chicago and they burden our system. They drop their trash in our trash cans. They bring bag lunches. They don't buy from us. If something happens, if they trip off the curb, they call our ambulance and it costs us. But then we did an impact study, and we found that there are more people from Chicago who work in the suburbs than there are people who work in the suburbs coming into Chicago. And we looked at what would happen if there was reciprocity from those neighboring suburbs. And we found that we would lose more money than we gained. So it's not a good neighbor policy, first of all. Second of all, we stand to lose in a battle. Who does it hurt? It hurts ordinary, average people. Yes, I'm Chicago first. But beyond that, I'm people-oriented. And it's working class people who would be hit by a commuter tax in Chicago. These are our families, our friends who've been forced out of the city of Chicago, who hope to someday come back. Let's keep it friendly. Instead, I recognize that the biggest elephant in the room is our debt to fund services program. Let me take you back real quickly, and I'll be real brief. Back in 1833, when the city of Chicago was founded, you had politicians who went out and campaigned, and they talked to people, and they said, vote for me. And we'll provide you roads, curbs, gutters, streets, and sidewalks. We'll provide you law and order in the city of Chicago. And the people said, we like you, we agree, you are our elected representatives. They had no money. The city had no money. So those elected representatives went to the bankers and they said, we made these promises to the people, loan us the money to do all the things we promised to do, and when the people pay their taxes, we will pay you back with interest. That interest is called debt service. Our debt service this year alone is $900 million. That is the money we have to pay in interest to the bankers who loaned us money on our revenue bonds, municipal bonds, and general obligation bonds. Our system has not changed. We spend, and then we tax, and then we pay the bankers plus interest. $900 million. Our budget this year is $8.9 billion. $900 million of that goes to pay interest to the bankers. Will never provide any service to the people of the city of Chicago. That leaves us only $8 billion to take care of the city's business. Build those road, curbs, gutters, sewers, sidewalks, provide street protection, keep Chicago's promise, a commitment to public safety, public education, affordable housing, senior care, full employment, balanced economic development. So how do we eliminate the payments of that $900 million, which in 2018 will be $1.7 billion? Here's what we do. We take that $1.7 billion that's currently sitting in the TIF slush fund, sitting idle, and use that to help pay down the debt. We increase the number of people who are eligible to bid on city contracts and bring the cost down through competitive bidding. You got one guy that says, I'll do it for $100,000. Another guy says, I'll do it for $99,000. Another guy says, I'll do it for $98,000. Sold to lowest, most responsive bidder. You're saving the citizens money. So now you take that $500 million and you put that towards our debt. You then have cost-saving measures, which you well identified on our website. Feel free to go to wallsformayor.com. I won't bore you with all of them now. But to the tune of $600 million a year, we're going to save the city money. You take that $600 million and help to pay down the debt. Over a period of 6 years, you can get to the point where we no longer owe the bankers, where the city is able to finance its own projects. And that's important because we have the second lowest bond rating of any major city in the country. You know who has a lower bond rating than the city of Chicago? That's right, and they're bankrupt, Detroit. So we have to transition Chicago from a debt-to-fund services revenue and expenditure system into a pay-as-you-go revenue and expenditure system. And then we're not searching for new fines, fees, and assessments to level against poor working people who can't afford to pay their rent, who live from check to check, because at the end of the day, that's who pays. It's a regressive tax. Let's eliminate those. Let's eliminate the concept of just constantly looking for ways to tax more people, whether they're in state or out of state or in the city or out of the city. It doesn't matter. That can't be our objective. Let's look at what really matters, and that is putting the city of Chicago on equal footing with the bankers. Instead of making them rich, let's use that money for the projects of the city of Chicago.
Okay, so our previous mayor attempted to brand himself as the green mayor, much to the hilarity of many of the people in the room. By the time that he left office, we didn't even have residential recycling throughout the city. And as of that time, by contrast, Portland had curbside composting. What is it going to take for Chicago to actually have a world-class recycling program and to actually be the green city that we have tried to claim that it is?
For Chicago to become a truly green city and deal with the recycling issue, you have to put people's own interest in the equation. You have to give people a stake in the outcome. The city makes money through recycling. All entities make money through recycling. you give people a tax break based upon the weight of their particular recycling, then they're incentivized to recycle with a vengeance. You also have to make it completely convenient for people. We have pickups on certain days for garbage, and in those areas where they're experimenting with the recycling program, we have pickups on another day. Do it one time and be through with it. You can have one machine, one garbage truck, one truck that on one side takes the garbage and on the other side it stores those items that have to be recycled. It has to be a program that makes sense for all people of the city of Chicago. But incentivizing it is what will kickstart that program and make it work. And think about this, our landfills are filling up pretty quickly in Chicago. That's a constant fight. So we'd be doing a service to ourselves in the sense that we'll be helping our ecology. So we have to reduce, recycle, repair, retrofit, and reuse, and mean it when we say it. We have to get involved with wind, solar, and geothermal. We have to make sure that we are green conscious in every sense of the word, that the people of the city of Chicago see that work in action and benefit from it. We need windmills along the lakefront. We need windmills along the railroad tracks because it's for the greater good, and it can be done in a way that it's environmentally friendly and pleasing aesthetically. I don't think people are offended when they see windmills. They think about the Dutch, and it's really an attractive presentation. And much of it can be done so far offshore that people don't even see it unless they go out looking for it. So we have to unthink our green initiatives.
Thank you. I think on the recycling, obviously, I think several years ago I asked the commissioner about what was the return on the recycling that we gave, and they said, we lose money. I was like surprised, and all these companies that bid it out on that we lose money. I mean, there should be, on the pickups, we should be getting money from them. We should be utilizing money out of those budgets. But that money should be not the driving force on a green economy. We need to look at our lake, make sure we're not having the toxins that are dumped in our lake and our river system, especially by BP Whiting in Indiana, making sure we have clean waters, clean waterways across the board. I think most people know I'm the only person that voted against the Petco ordinances because it didn't go far. We need to ban Petco. Clearly, right now, there's no need for that to be in this city, period. We need to create pools of money directed towards building renewable energy and resources. All the wind, I really am, I'm always amazed when I go a lot on the south side and I see the wind turbines that we have. But we need more of them across the board to replace energy and efficiency here. We need to be looking at a carbon tax on big polluters. I'm not in favor of taxes really, or fines or fees. But big polluters, they're fining us. We should be fining them significantly across the board. We should be looking at ways. I'm very disappointed with the infrastructure trust. We just finally did an $18 million bond deal for the city to redo our energy items. And had to go through a bond deal through the infrastructure trust when we had money pending through our TIF programs. We could have redone all of our city buildings without further borrowing of our monies. On building projects, you can go past Madison and Des Plaines and look up at the building over there. I worked with the PepsiCo, which is the Pepsi company, to make sure that they were energy efficient. We put turbines up there. We've got solar panels. I've been an advocate for all of our buildings, even for our housing units, to do that across the board. I have a number of projects in the ward right now, and as mayor, I would insist that we have solar panels and we have wind turbines throughout the city to save on energy costs and to save the people of this city money, because it's hard pressed, especially in the winters. And we have a gasoline tax that comes up during the summer because of the pollution that's caused here in this area. You know, you see that spike that happens. It's because it's been mandated by Congress that we're in one of those areas that we have to increase our taxes. Well, gasoline prices are so low, I don't think that's going to affect anybody right now. In the past, it has, when it was $4 and $5, almost $5 a gallon. We need to be energy conscious. We need to be energy efficient. And we need to make sure that all projects that we have that are built in the city, and including roads, sidewalks, I've been a proponent of making sure, and you can read the stacks of letters that I have that go to developers, that go to our infrastructure people, that we make sure we find the most energy sustainable, long-term sustainable materials to be used. I have 14, 15 alleys that would last 100 years using the most energy efficient programs. But the city doesn't want to do it because they say it won't create jobs. Oh, it'll help those homeowners. It'll help increase their own property values because they have a sustainable alley as opposed to what we see so often. I think we need to do better. There's no doubt about it. We need to look at groups. We need to look at everything we do, because what we build today is just not for today. It's for the long-term future. And so we must use the best sustainable products that we can, the most energy efficient products that we can, and cost saving for our residents. Thank you.
Back in late 2013, the O'Hare modernization plan kicked in, and we had new runways running east, west, north, south, more planes, more noise, more air pollution. Even the assessor's office and the Board of Review have concurred on this, as some properties have had their assessments lowered because they're now under flight paths. The question is, what solutions do you propose to make O'Hare a better neighbor?
Well, I'm not sure if it's going to be O'Hare is the better neighbor, because I don't think that's the question. The real question is how we utilize our airports within our area, from Rockford to Lansing, to obviously the greater compact, the Chicago Gary International Airport. Remember that one? You probably have all flown in and out of it. And we pay our taxpayers' money to fund that airport. As I found out this year, last year I asked, how much are we paying for that to the commissioner during the budget? They didn't know. This year, they came up with some wild numbers, several millions of dollars that we're now paying to it. And they said, I said, well, we don't have any gates there. We don't have any, every time we have a entity, like whatever the airline comes in, within 90 days they're gone. And they said, yeah, well, no, it's there for Boeing, another one of the corporate handouts. We're just there to make sure Boeing has a place to land their airplanes. Well, I think that's a place that we ought to be doing all of our freight, to avoid all the air problems at night, as you probably know. It's all, most of the freight flies at night, and some of those people that are still up and awake way into those hours, and so we can divert that over there. And if they need an easier airport too, they can go to Rockford. I've been a proponent of that for quite a number of years. At the same time, I was up there on a Friday night gathering signatures one night, and the woman came out. She was willingly signed my petition, and she had a young child. He was probably about 6, 7 at the oldest, and all of a sudden a plane came overhead. I guarantee you could see the people that were in the airplane. You can read the numbers that were on that wings, and the poor child started violently shaking. This was in November beginning of November, and it was a nice warm Friday night, and you can't hear the person that you're talking to. Well, I think we have to reconstruct that. I've introduced a resolution that I know the city council, the members don't want to hear it because this mayor doesn't want to hear it because he hasn't done anything with the FAA. And it's our airport that we need to alleviate the concerns of the citizens. Their property values have depressed because of the new runways that have opened up. And so we created another depressed area forcibly by government, almost causing inverse condemnation. Just like the people in the 10th ward, because of Petco, they can't sell their homes. I mean, what are we doing who are we helping? Are we just helping the few and the rich, and while the poor suffer? Poor being the working class people, those that have their affordable homes up on the north side can no longer sell them because that plane going overhead, you don't want to be there. You don't want to have somebody in your home as that plane's going overhead and you're trying to sell it. I mean, we really got to rethink what we're doing here. The airport came to them. They didn't move to an airport that was as loud and as noisy as we see. So we need to refigure, reconstruct, and work with our officials now and not in the future to redirect all these problems. Thank you. And Midway's the same too.
I opposed the O'Hare reconstruction program early on. Studies showed that it was not necessary to build 7 new runways to increase the traffic flowing in and out of O'Hare Airport, but all you had to do was change the configuration of just 2 airports to get the same impact. They went forward with the building of that because it made money for a whole lot of people. But the people in the city of Chicago suffer as a result of that. Now keep in mind, unfortunately Bob is wrong, the people moved to the nuisance. The nuisance was already there, the nuisance just grew. So you have to be creative. Back in 1983, we established a program spurred by a woman on the southwest side called Jean Mayer. The problem back then was block busting. You had people who would come in and buy one house on the block and move a black family in, and then families were racing to get out. White families were racing to get out. And as a result, the last ones to sell, their property values were very low and they got absolutely nothing. So we established an insurance program funded by the city of Chicago to protect against that and make certain that people's property values did not go below what the market rate was at the time that the first blockbusting incident occurred. I suggest we have a similar program, a similar program for neighbors surrounding the airport to make sure that their property values don't go down as a result of this nuisance that's been created. And that money should come from the entities who benefited from the runways. It's important that we protect the citizens of the city of Chicago from big business intrusion and poor business decisions on the part of the city of Chicago. So I think that we have to protect them with an insurance program, and hopefully we can get a mix of people. Now, I'm the kind of person, I love being in a flight path. It doesn't, it doesn't bother me. And there are others like me. I love to watch the airplanes come and go. I'm impressed by the aerodynamics. I can never figure out how things that large stay up in the air with that many people. I don't care how much I understand aeronautics. So I would hope that we get a mix of people who, under the right conditions, are comfortable in that environment over a period of time.
All right, so it's 10:30 now. I know that Alderman Fioretti has to get going, so we're going to wrap up. I don't know if you both wanted to say something in conclusion as well. I'd say go right ahead and do that first.
Excuse me. It's interesting. In this race, we have a mix of candidates. Rahm Emanuel came here on the coattails of Barack Obama with an ostensible endorsement, and people blindly accepted that endorsement of Rahm Emanuel and voted for him blindly. Over a period of time, people have grown to realize that that was a mistake. He is not someone who really cares about the city of Chicago. I watch him now. He spends most of his time campaigning in the African American community, in the black community, as though he is now going to be their savior, when his policies have negatively impacted blacks more than any other group in the city of Chicago. And that's unfortunate. And we hope that people aren't fooled by Rahm Emanuel's trickery. Willie Wilson, a businessman, 7th grade education, never received a 8th grade diploma, never received a high school diploma, never pursued a GED, never got a college degree, never got a master's degree, never earned a doctor's degree, but insists that people call him Dr. Willie Wilson. I think that's so disingenuous. I truly believe that that is disingenuous, not what we need in Chicago. You have to know your limitations. Bob Fioretti is well studied. He's been a progressive alderman who's paid attention in some instances, and he and I will talk about later on about some places where he's fallen short. But none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. Jesus Garcia, he is someone who is for sale. He was for the ban on red light cameras until someone gave him a campaign contribution that happened to be a contractor that installs red light cameras. And then he was for red light cameras. He voted for the one in River Forest. And just recently, Bob, myself, and Jesus Garcia were at a Ban the Red Light Camera rally, and we all signed a pledge to ban those red light cameras in their entirety. And then 2 days later, Jesus Garcia went over to the University of Chicago, and he retracted his position because that crowd wasn't in favor of the red light camera ban. That's called duplicitous. You say one thing over here and another thing over there. That's not integrity. If he'll do that on a small issue like that publicly, what will he do behind closed doors to sell you out? So this is a very important election. And people need to take a good look at the candidates and what the candidates stand for. And in summation, let me simply say there are two Chicagos. There's a world-class Chicago and there's an underclass Chicago. The world-class Chicago is beautiful, it's safe, it's tourist-friendly, it's robust, it's full of resources and unlimited opportunity for the privileged few. It's a playground for Rahm Emanuel and the other one-percenters who have money, riches, connection, and clout. That's the Chicago that the mayor and the media love to brag about. And then there's that underclass Chicago. Chicago that the mayor and the media whisper when they talk about. Decaying neighborhoods, unsafe streets, people dodging potholes and bullets. Inferior city services, trigger-happy police. No jobs, no schools, no parks, no economic development. Slumlords, food deserts, gas and electricity shutoffs, boarded up buildings, vacant lots. Red light cameras, blue light cameras, speed zone cameras, things that make people uncomfortable in life and rob average people. That's why I'm against fines, fees, and assessments. Where does it end? We're going down that slope. At some point in time, we have to curb our spending. Chicago does just fine when we as a people stand up and demand more. Make people sharpen their pencil. But if we just write blank checks and find more funding sources, those people that have that spending addiction, just continue to spend our money and there is no end in sight. Hold the line with me. We will make sure that Chicago is an efficient and effective government that has a vision that will make all people of the city of Chicago financially secure. We want a prosperity government, not an austerity government where we're asking city employees to take furlough days, but we don't go to the big businesses and say, curtail your profit margins. Those big businesses earn 30% profit margin. They take home the lion's share. On a $1 billion project, they take home $300 million, where the poor people pay the cost and suffer. Employees suffer. So think real long and hard. I've had a relationship with the Green Party. As I indicated earlier, I endorsed Rich Whitney because I understand the plight of hardworking people with a program that's not mainstream yet. People say he's run for mayor 3 times. Yes. Mitt Romney has run for president 3 times. He's running for president again, and they're celebrating that fact. It's the experience that I bring to the table that matters. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Bill Doc Walls for mayor.
Thank you. And thank you, Doc. And I'm glad that we're here to the end. I think it was important in terms of what we see. You know, when I gave that opening statement, I said something about we need to reassert our values. You know, my values were from the South Side. I'm a product of the schools, its parks. My first job was bussing tables on 110th at a restaurant and washing trucks in the afternoon. But it gave me a sense of social justice on who we are and what we are. At the same time, it made me, especially in the last few years, inclined to what our environment's about. Many of you know I had a bad bout with cancer 4 years ago. And I'm a cancer survivor. And I lost 50 pounds, I put 40 back on, had a feeding tube for 7 months, 33 hits of radiation, a lot of chemo. And I thought it was probably from a virus that it was. And then all of a sudden I started looking at our environment. And the 9th Ward has the highest incident even today of breast cancer. The 10th Ward, high asthma problems with their children because of Petco. And then, way over in that other section of Beverly, I sat with the alderman and he told me about all the young people in his ward. He had 8 cases of brain cancer. We're doing something to the environment that we have to improve. And so when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about being sensitive to the environment, well, we better start cleaning it up, starting with our rivers and what we do. You know, at the same time, we need to have a collaboration, a collaborative effort for grassroots democracy to bring everybody together, to have forums. And I did that. You know, I listened to aldermen and say, well, you know what, I still got to push a project through. It's just over 50%. No, that's not good enough. You can do it by collaborative approaches. I remember one time where a project probably couldn't get through the ward, but I worked with the developer 28 times, 28 meetings we had. And then they went out into the community. And what happened? 3 out of 150 some people that showed up, 3 people were opposed to the project. That's the way you have to do it. You have to educate, go out. We just had a new project at State and Division, which is in the new 2nd Ward. I had them go out to every condominium association and talk to them and tell what their project was and how they're going to do community benefits for all of the area. You know, you need to decentralize what we're doing. And at the same time, we need to bring down the violence in this city. We do it by jobs. You know, we need, and I've said it way over and over again, community-based economics should be controlling in terms of our TIFs, our jobs, to make sure that everyone has a job here in this city. But this election is about choice. It's about choice. Are we going to hear the same from career politicians or a new direction for this city? I want to Chicago that works for all the citizens, not just campaign donors, as I said earlier, or the special interests that fill certain campaign coffers. We need a mayor that will look out for the people of this city, even when it's not popular. You know, you can ask anyone. When we're in the council, I'm not the most popular guy. You can even ask the mayor that. But it's why? It's because I stand up for the people. I say what I believe, and I stand up for them. While this administration leaves the people behind. That's quite clear. We need economic development outside of the loop and in our neighborhoods. We need more officers on the street. We need to solve our fiscal problems now rather than kicking them down the road for another day. We need to open up our mental health clinics now instead of waiting. And we need to reform our TIFs so they're not a slush fund for the wealthy. That's the direction I've been trying to move this city council. I am the leader of the Progressive Caucus, and it's tough too on the 8 that we have in that caucus. And I'm worried about them because they're directing that huge super PAC against them and to support aldermen that have supported this administration. Can you imagine raising $1 million to eliminate 8 voices in the city council because they're critical of your program and they bring good, fresh ideas? Well, all I can say in closing, if you're happy with the direction of this city, then welcome to the 1%. If not, vote February 24th. I need your vote, and I ask for your support. Thank you, everyone.
So I'd like to thank Doc Walls, Bob Fioretti, Chuy Garcia for being with us this morning. If you are a party member, please make sure you see us out in the hall if you haven't done so already, and please consider being at our meeting next Saturday at the Albany Park Library. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it and hope to see you soon.